Welcome to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. In every episode, we feature successful women attorneys and other business professionals to reflect on what career advice would you give your younger self. We hope to provide insights and inspiration toward your professional success. You can find this show at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Success in Brief, Rosanne Felicello.
Good morning. My name is Rosanne Felicello, and this is Success in Brief. I'm thrilled today to welcome Dana Catanzaro to our podcast. Dana is a partner at Litchfield Cavo LLP, where she handles high-exposure personal injury defense matters. She's also the president of the Colombian Lawyers Association of the First Department, which is an Italian-American attorney association here in New York City. In addition, Dana is actively involved in numerous bar associations and is a frequent speaker at continuing legal education seminars on the topics of New York State labor law. And she's also managed to maintain some other non-law interests. She sings and is the chair of the New York City Bar Chorus. So welcome, Dana.
Thank you, Rosanne.
I met Dana through my service on the board of the Colombian Lawyers Association. She's a fantastic leader to the organization and has guided it through the recent pandemic. We're about to have our first major gathering in October. It's coming up. So very exciting. And so I'm very excited to introduce you to Dana and to share with you her story of success. So Dana, first question, what was your path to becoming an attorney? How did you get here?
Well, it's funny. I was always interested in the law, grew up watching reruns of Law and Order and always liked writing and was on the speech and debate team in high school. Did a lot of musical theater in high school. So I always liked the performance arts, so to speak. In college, my major was actually psychology with a minor in communications. And I was interested in child psychology, didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And then I did an internship in juvenile court in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Through my psychology major, it was credits towards my major, but it got me into the courthouse. And that kind of solidified my interest in pursuing a career in the law, being in the courthouse a couple of days a week and seeing everything that goes on behind the scenes and seeing the interaction between the social workers, between the police officers, child guardians, everyone else that was doing their thing and working with the clerks in the background. I realized that being in the courthouse and being in the courtroom was more appealing to me.
Well, that's fascinating. I'm sure the psychology helps with the law as well.
It did more than I could say.
Did you grow up with any attorneys in your family, or was it really just?
I didn't. I first attorney in my family. My father went to CUNY and was an architect, and didn't have too many family members that went to college. No one with anything beyond a college degree. So I was kind of the first, which is why I went to a liberal arts college to get that general liberal arts background and kind of figure out what I wanted. So, I went straight from college to law school, graduated law school at 24, and kind of figured it out while I was doing it.
That's interesting. I'm the first attorney in my family as well. So it definitely is a different perspective, I think, than people that grow up with attorneys in their family and know what it means to go to law school and how you then choose your career afterwards. So how did you go from undergrad, you went to law school, and then how did you figure out, okay, what kind of law am I going to practice?
So it's funny because I graduated in 2009, so kind of, mid-recession, and there were a lot of hiring freezes. So I had done some interviews with, different kind of child services because I was still interested in that connection between the child psychology courses I had taken and a law degree. So I was initially looking for something like that. But because there were so many of the government agencies had very limited hiring or total hiring freezes, that was no longer an option. So I actually interned at a firm during law school, my second and third year of law school, that was right near, I went to law school in Tribeca, And this law firm was a few blocks away from the school and right across the street from the courthouses. And it was a sort of boutique firm. They did criminal defense, they did matrimonial, they did personal injury, real estate transactions, immigration, you name it, and they did it. So that internship was great because it really kind of introduced me to all of these different fields of law in the practical sense, and not just this is what you're learning in the course books and listening to in seminars. So I really had that boots on the ground practice, and was going to the courthouses to file pleadings, to pick up items from the clerk's office, pick up arrest tickets, sit in on arraignments. So I got that hands-on experience doing that.
Well, that sounds great. I mean, it's an experience that most law students don't actually get. I think it's invaluable to figuring out what kind of law you even want to practice if you haven't been exposed to it in practice, right?
Absolutely. And because I was at this one firm for 2 years, I had a lot more experience than had I done a semester or had done just a summer. So it was, consistent during the school year, and then full-time over the summer, and then the school year, and then up until I was studying for the bar exam, I was working there. So I really got kind of in the trenches and got to work up cases more than I would have if I had done a couple, a one semester internship. And I got, because it was a small boutique firm that handled so many different aspects of law, I got to experience the personal injury cases, the landlord tenant cases, the matrimonial work, and really get a feel for what I was interested in.
And when did you start sort of moving more towards narrowing your scope into what you were going to focus on specifically?
Again, that kind of all happened because of the job market and what was available. So after I left that firm, I volunteered for a matrimonial judge. My uncle was her court officer. So I did that for several months while I was looking for permanent employment. And then through a connection at New York Law School, where I was involved in the Center for Real Estate Studies, because I was always interested also in the real estate law, having a father as an architect, building and new buildings in Manhattan was always something that interested me. So having maintained a connection with the one of the professors who was involved with the Center for Real Estate Studies, she actually notified me when there was an opportunity at a commercial real estate firm. So I went from the volunteering for the matrimonial judge into commercial real estate, representing mortgage companies and drafting mortgage documents for cooperative buildings. So very, very different.
Very different. Yeah, not really litigation at all. So you practice litigation now, though, right?
Yes. So after that opportunity, Rosanne, you'll appreciate this. I was at a judges' night dinner at the Columbus Citizens Foundation, attending an event for the Colombian Lawyers Association, which, as you mentioned, I'm now the president of the First Department chapter of that organization. And I was attending a dinner, this is probably now 11 years ago or so. And I sat next to a partner at a litigation firm doing insurance defense litigation, and applied for a job immediately after meeting him, got his business card, sent over my resume the next day, and got the job. And I've been in that industry ever since. So it just serendipitous how it worked out, who I was sitting next to, that they happened to be hiring. And then it got me back into the courtroom, because as much as I enjoyed doing the real estate transactional work, it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. It was something new. It was something, I enjoyed the opportunity to learn something new, but I did want to be back in the courtroom.
That's interesting, and it really dovetails with some of the themes that you and I discuss all the time, such as networking and how important it is to really be open to meeting new people and maybe changing a course of your career or something just based on those meetings, and really continuously trying to meet new people.
Absolutely.
I know you're a big proponent of networking. What advice would you give to those starting out as to how you can actually put yourself in the best position to, network and sometimes that word gets a sort of a negative connotation. So how would you put a positive spin on it?
Yeah, I think just being open to it is most important, because sometimes opportunities present themselves to you, and it's not so much you having to go out and seek meeting with people or reaching out to people or cold calling, all those negative connotations that come with the word networking. Sometimes it's just being receptive. If you meet someone and they're willing to help you, don't pass up on that opportunity, because that one person who's willing to help and wants to guide the next generation of lawyers is going to be a much better mentor than 10 people combined that you may reach out to because they went to your college or they went to your law school. So pay attention when those opportunities present themselves and grab on and take advantage of that.
And would you say that this networking has helped you in your career?
Oh, absolutely. And I did in law school, they give you, and in college, they tell you reach out to your alumni networks and send some emails, offer to buy people a coffee that work in Midtown. And I did that. I sent those emails to, graduates of my Fairfield University, where I went for undergrad, and New York Law School. And, you certainly can meet people that way. But the best opportunity is really when someone offers to help you or offers to introduce you to people. Those connections are priceless, because this is someone who is taking an interest in the next generation of attorneys and is willing to open up their network to you. So by me going to that dinner where I sat next to the partner who was hiring, I only went to that dinner because someone had an extra ticket and invited me to go. So by me staying in touch with someone who was offering their mentorship, I went to this dinner and then I met someone else. And those same opportunities have kind of guided my career. And when I've left firms to go to other firms, they've all been through connections. So when I talk to younger attorneys now, and I had spoken not too long ago at an event for New York Law School, they did a virtual seminar with all leaders at different bar associations in Manhattan. And that was one of the themes that we discussed is, taking advantage of those opportunities and seeing what can come of them. So I actually left my first defense firm to go to another one because a friend recommended me, and then the same thing from the second firm to where I am now.
That's amazing. And you're at a much larger firm now than where you had started
Yes.
out. Is that right? And how do you compare the experience of working at a small boutique to the firm that you are at now, which is fairly large and has regional offices all over the country?
Yeah, it's definitely very different. A firm with less than 5 people, less than 5 attorneys and staff, you obviously have a very familial group, and lunches in the conference room together. And that was a really great experience for me as a law student and a young attorney, because I stayed on there after I took the bar exam, to have that relationship with partners that you might not have at a bigger firm, where you can ask questions, you can follow them to the courtroom and then come back to the office and get their thought process, after whatever proceeding that they had covered. You don't always have those opportunities in a larger firm. I think for me, getting those experiences as a young attorney gave me the experience that I needed to get to where I am at this firm, because I did develop the confidence early on by having so many hands-on partners that I could work with and talk to and really learn from.
Oh, that's great. And now that you're in a leadership position at the firm, your partner, how do you use what you've learned to guide the next generation of attorneys that are working with you?
Well, I make myself available to everyone, because it's kind of just the motto of paying it forward, but also knowing that sometimes people have a lot of potential and they need someone to guide them, and maybe a younger or a newer attorney doesn't have the confidence yet, and that's something that you really need to learn and develop. So I'm always available to anyone who wants to sit in on a deposition, observe a virtual court appearance, attend a mediation, assist with trial preparation, because you need the more experienced attorneys to allow you that opportunity to shadow and learn, because there are certain things you can't just jump in. We have private clients. The clients are not going to be very happy if you're throwing in, fresh out of law school attorney into a deposition that's a very complex case. So if you don't give the younger, newer associates the opportunity to observe and shadow and ask questions, they're never going to feel confident enough to do it on their own, and they're never going to learn.
No, I mean, it's extremely important, and it's a challenge, I think, making that balance, right? Like when can they take on more responsibility? It's really a case by case, right? There's not like one set period of time. Okay, you've gone to 3 depositions with me, now you can take one. It just doesn't work that way because it is so individual as to when someone might be ready to take on that responsibility.
Yeah, and I think as a partner in a firm where you have associates that are working for you or under you, you have that responsibility to train them. It's on you. If they don't learn and they don't progress to the next step where they're confident to take that deposition, that speaks to something that I'm not doing right, because it is my job to make sure that they get to that point and get to that level. So I make sure that I'm meeting with associates or speaking with them at least once a week to check in on their progress. No question is too silly. No topic is too small to discuss, because it's that groundwork and that you do early on that is going to lend to you being confident to handle the bigger cases and the bigger court appearances down the road.
I agree with all that. How have you found, the pandemic experience to have affected your ability to offer that mentorship?
In some ways it's made it easier, in some ways it's made it harder. Obviously we're still kind of in a pseudo remote situation at my firm here, where people are coming in several days a week. So you're not getting the FaceTime, even when people are in their offices. I think a lot of people are seeing this too in their firms and their companies, is people are more to themselves, staying in their offices, doors closed. There's not as much socialization as there was before. So in that sense, it's made it more difficult. But in terms of the virtual court appearances and virtual depositions, which have kind of stayed fairly consistent, that's in some ways made it easier, because you can easily have someone log on to a Microsoft Teams and sit in on an oral argument of a summary judgment motion that lasts for 45 minutes or an hour on the computer, and they could do that, mute themselves, shut off their video while they're doing other work, still be productive, but still get to observe an oral argument. Whereas had we been fully in person, very rare would anyone, any firm say, okay, associate, come to court. We might be sitting here for 5 hours until we actually get to argue this, for the chance that you might get to see an argument. So it's definitely made it easier in some ways.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. As a small firm, we don't have that same number of people at our practice, so often we do all go to court. So it's interesting to hear the other perspective. I've noticed recently that courts are starting to require more in-person again. How is that affecting your day-to-day practice? Are you seeing that as well?
It's definitely a transition. For me in my practice and what I do, so far what's been in person are the pre-trial conferences or the trials, and sitting in court for 6-7 hours, waiting to conference with the judge is very different from sitting in my office working, hopping on a Teams meeting for a half hour, and then going back to what I'm doing. So it's an adjustment. I actually invested in a new Microsoft Surface tablet, so that when I am in court for all these hours, I can still do my regular work. I had an old laptop, it just wasn't cutting it. So one of these days that I was one of my first full days back in court, I on a whim was like, it's time to purchase a tablet. So that's making it a little bit easier. And it's just adjusting to this is the new normal. So once in a while I go to court and I'm there for a very long time, and the rest of the days I'm in my office doing remote appearances. So we just have to adjust, because this is probably subject to change again as courts continue to reopen even more.
It's interesting. There does seem to be a pushback by the court of maintaining some of these appearances virtually, that some of them really, there's no reason why we have to be in person, I would think, a lot of the pretrial stuff, but they really seem to be pushing for more in person. I'm wondering what's behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for, in my industry, we have a lot of discovery conferences, and to be able to do those on a Zoom conference call, it's kind of similar to doing a telephone conference call pre-COVID, where everyone's on the phone, everyone's talking, and let's just work this out. This isn't a big argument. This isn't, something as significant as a trial. So let's just talk it through 10, 15, 20 minutes and come to a resolution. So that's been great in really keeping the cases moving. And I think, a lot of the courthouses pre-COVID were notorious for having attorneys sit around for hours at a time to wait to conference either a discovery motion or just a regular status conference to set deposition dates. And you could definitely be more efficient when you have more time in the office to focus on the writing and the research and preparing for the court appearances, rather than sitting around in court waiting just to see a court attorney, when you could certainly, we've now proven we could do that virtually.
Exactly. I want to go back to networking for a minute. I know we spoke about you using networking as a tool really to improve your career and move your career forward. But do you also rely on networking to build your practice, or what are some of the tools
Absolutely.
you use to build your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. By going to different events and meeting different people, you're opening up the doors for referrals. And I've received many referrals from either former colleagues that I've seen at events, or from connections through different bar associations. And just by putting your face out there and talking to people, they remember, oh, this is the type of work you do. I have a conflict at my firm where we do the same type of work. We have a conflict. We can't take on this case. Maybe you could take it on. Or someone who does matrimonial law and they get a personal injury case. They know nothing about it. They remember that you do this type of work. They pass it along. So I've definitely seen a lot of referrals come in through the networking. And it's, it goes both ways. So the more people the more you can refer cases out, the more you can refer cases in. And I've absolutely done that, because if someone's asking, and again, being the only lawyer in my family, I get a lot of questions, any type of law, even if it's something I have no idea about. So I can say, actually, you have a question about these contracts? Don't know anything about employment contracts, but my friend Rosanne does. And I can then pass that person off to you. So I appreciate being able to make those connections for either clients or friends or family that are looking for certain attorneys. And I know someone that not only know someone that does that type of law, but I know someone personally and can speak to them as not only being a hard worker, but also being a good person that I would want my family member or friend to work with.
Yeah, no, it's key, I think, when you're making referrals. That I know I only make referrals to attorneys that I appreciate not only being a very good attorney, but a good person. I know they're going to look out for the person that I'm referring to. So
absolutely,
it's definitely key. So any high-end personal injury construction work is definitely yours, Dana.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Speaking of which, we are a small group, as female litigators here in New York City. I find this all the time when I go to court. You're often the only female on that side of the bar, right? Of the judge. So I'm wondering, in your experience, how you navigated that. That sort of the culture of New York, Manhattan, especially. It's still very male in the litigation world.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been a consistent theme throughout my practice, is that being the one of the only women, or one of the youngest people in the room, there's always that that stereotyping that goes on. And for the first time I really experienced it was actually when I was doing that internship in the courthouse, and I was probably 20 years old at the time, and looked even younger. And one of the attorneys actually, and happened to be a gentleman, but asked me for a stapler. It was something like as if I was just this low level, staple this for me right now, like commanding I do something. And that was the first time I really saw that in practice. And then when I started going to court, after passing the bar and being the young female, it's very common that at working out a discovery order and someone hands you a piece of paper and says, okay, you'll fill this out, right? Like, my handwriting's not that great. I don't know why I'm filling it out, but that's kind of the consistent theme. And, I've attended a lot of CLEs where, women have talked about, the walk into a room for a deposition and, oh, you must be the court reporter. And that is a consistent theme. And I think things are starting to change from when I started practicing to now. It's definitely, especially with even with the ethics CLE requirement now, I think the bar as a whole is being a little more cognizant of discriminating based on gender or sex or age, but we still have a ways to go. In my specific practice area where I'm dealing with construction accidents, it is especially a male-dominant field. Most of the plaintiffs are men. Most of the representatives of different construction companies that are testifying at depositions or trial are men, just because of the nature of the construction industry in Manhattan. So oftentimes one of the only or one of the few female attorneys in the room. And, you could tell a lot of times these construction workers, they're answering questions. And then when it comes my turn to start questioning, they kind of roll their eyes a little bit like, this person's not going to know anything about this type of work. And it is overcoming that. But you kind of have to have a thick skin. So that's something I think it comes with practice. And after doing this for a certain amount of years and growing confident in the field that you're working in, you power through it. And once you do that, very quickly, everyone's attitudes kind of change. And then you get the respect that you should have had from the get-go. But sometimes it takes a little longer than it should.
Sure. I mean, I think sometimes you can use their underestimation of you to your advantage. At least I feel like, because they're not expecting you to ask the hard questions,
right,
or to ask because they don't think you know what you're talking about until you start asking questions.
Yeah, and and it's because my dad's an architect and my uncle's a contractor, and I came from a family where they were doing their own designs for their kitchen extensions and doing the building. Went to work with my dad as a kid, wearing a hard hat, seeing a job site. So I was always very comfortable around the construction industry, and I do have a very general knowledge from my family for all those years, but that's not something that is expected when you walk into the room. So I've certainly used it to my advantage, and I don't get offended by it anymore, or at least I try not to. And it's not something that we should have to accept, but it's something that you become more equipped to deal with the more competent you become in your career and the more experience that you have.
Agree on all fronts. So we mentioned earlier that you not only practice law, but you also participate in a lot of bar associations, you speak publicly, you sing in a choir group. How do you manage to balance all of these commitments and also maintain something of a personal life as well?
Well, sometimes I don't know how I do manage to balance it all. It's a lot, but it's really important to me to give back and to help the next generation of attorneys. So when it comes to the bar associations, I really enjoy meeting law students and meeting young lawyers and helping them, because I was so fortunate from the people that I've met that have helped me throughout my career and been willing to guide and mentor me, that it really means something that I'm able to pay it forward and help the next generation of lawyers. Because this is a profession. This isn't a 9-to-5 job. This is when we're retired and not practicing, and it's the next generation of lawyers that are carrying forward everything that we did to get them to that point. So it's really important to me to meet people and to mentor them and offer the same advice that people offered me that helped me get to where I am. And there are plenty of law students and young lawyers who are willing to receive that help. And it's really rewarding when you meet people who want to continue that relationship and want to volunteer and want to learn. And it's really nice to see that.
Oh, that's really wonderful, that you're able to provide that guidance as well. And sort of ties into my next question, which is, what do you value most about being an attorney?
So I think kind of tying into the previous answer, I value that we are building something that goes beyond us, and beyond our lifetime of practice, and whether it's legal precedent that's being established by cases that we argue or briefs or motions that we write, or it's just the next generation of lawyers that we come across through bar associations, through internships, through meeting them in court. We're building something that's going to continue to grow long after we're gone. And it's really amazing if you think about it, because not many professions have that longevity.
Oh, that's true. You might be cited in 50 years. Who knows? Okay, last 3 questions. These are meant to be a little bit more rapid fire. They don't always work out that way, but if you couldn't be an attorney, and I have a guess here what the answer might be, but I'm going to see what you say. What career would you choose?
So as you mentioned earlier, I sing with the New York City Bar Chorus. And I mentioned musical theater, so you kind of have a hint to my answer there. I would have loved to have pursued a career on Broadway, musical theater. But even though that didn't happen, I'm able to sing in a group of lawyers, and I've been doing that since law school. So I kind of get the singing, and also good networking through meeting other lawyers through the chorus as well.
That's amazing. You might have to do a review for Colombian Lawyers Association.
Matthew, actually, our was he first vice president, I believe?
I think that's right.
I don't have the
He's an officer
head in front of me, but Matthew Grieco from our organization is actually the pianist for the City Bar Chorus. So I actually met Matthew when I was a young law student. And now we serve together on the board. So
you never know where things are going to lead, right?
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, question number 2. What is one thing you wish you knew when you graduated law school that you know now?
That the little things don't matter and are not as big as they seem in the moment. That one question on the bar exam that you're not sure how you did, that initial interview for a job straight out of law school, those things aren't as important as they feel in the moment, because it's all going to work out. Whether you change career paths, you take the bar again, it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to be. And those moments that seem so crucial and so difficult, when they happen, years later, you're going to look back and laugh, because they were so insignificant in the grand scheme of your career.
I apologize for the noise behind me. When you work in an office in New York City, you occasionally have background noise that you cannot control. No, I love that advice. I think it's absolutely true that a lot of times the personalities that go to law school, we tend to sweat the small stuff. And really, you have to learn to see the big picture, and that each small thing isn't as important as sometimes you give the weight you give to it, I guess I should say. And lastly, would you recommend a career in law to women who are considering that coming out of law school or coming out of college? Do you think it's a good path for a woman?
Absolutely. Whether you want to be in the courtroom or in an office or working for a company, there's so many different paths you can choose. And what kind of ties into my previous answer about those little things don't matter so much, because you could have an image of what going to law school is or what being a lawyer is, and it's such a tiny piece of the big puzzle that is lawyering and what you could do with a law degree. So if it's something that interests you, go to law school, meet as many people as you can, intern in as many places as you can, volunteer, talk to people, find mentors like Rosanne and myself that are willing to let you shadow them, because there's so many different things you can do with a law degree that you might not even realize until you start really getting out there and talking to people.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well, thank you so much, Dana. This has been wonderful. And thanks again for joining us. And listeners, you can find Dana on LinkedIn or on Litchfield Cavo's website. And as she mentioned, she's available for mentoring, as am I. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosanne.
You've been listening to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others. You can catch prior episodes at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. You've been listening to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others. You can catch prior episodes at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.